Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Ariel Fenwick stood barefoot in the frost-bitten square as iron chains bit into her wrists and blood soaked the hem of her linen dress. The villagers of Thornhaven Crossing circled her with faces twisted in fear and relief, because fear always searched for someone weaker to sit beside it. Snow drifted through torch smoke, landing in her dark lashes, melting into tears she refused to wipe away. Brother Caldisfire read her sentence aloud with shaking hands, calling her cursed, calling her bait, calling her human offering. She heard the word wolf, and the crowd flinched backward as if saying it too loudly would summon teeth from the trees. Ariel did not scream when the guards shoved her forward. She remembered her guardian Leora's voice begging her to run, remembered choosing not to. If she ran, they would burn the house. If she stayed, the pack would come. She lifted her chin anyway. At the forest's edge, beyond the torches, golden eyes opened in the dark. The wolves had already arrived. Their silence felt heavier than chains, promising that survival would demand obedience, sacrifice, and a choice she could not yet see before dawn broke and ended her life forever. The night tore itself open as wolves emerged, massive shapes gliding across snow without sound. Ariel's breath caught when the largest stepped into firelight, fur black as wet ink, eyes burning like moons. This was Valor Runeclaw, Wolf King of the Moonscar Wilds, the name whispered to frighten children into obedience. He did not bare his teeth. He stared at Ariel as if the crowd vanished, as if the chains were lies. The bond struck like a blade through her chest. Her knees buckled, pain and heat crashing together, and the world tilted. Gasps erupted behind her. Nixa Silvermere hissed Valor's name in warning, while Eldrin Hollowfang reached for a blade he did not draw. Valor inhaled, slow and disbelieving, scenting truth where everyone else saw weakness. Human, mate, impossible. Ariel felt it too, a pull dragging her heart toward him, toward danger. Brother Caldis shouted for the sacrifice to continue, but the wolves growled, sound rolling like thunder. Valor lifted a hand. Silence obeyed him. He spoke one word, low and fatal, claiming her before the world could burn her. The claim sealed fate, shattered laws, and marked Ariel Fenwick as the spark of war between packs and villages. Ariel was dragged forward, not by human hands now, but by destiny snapping tight. Valor cut the chains himself, claws flashing silver, metal falling useless into snow. The touch of his fingers burned where iron had been, sending heat through her frozen skin. He said nothing as he gathered her into his cloak, black fur swallowing her slight frame, shutting out the screams. Leora cried her name from the crowd, voice breaking, and Ariel twisted, torn between worlds. Valor turned his back on Thornhaven Crossing. Wolves closed ranks, bodies forming a living wall as torches flew and shattered. Flames licked snow and died. They moved fast, faster than fear, forests swallowing them whole. Inside the darkness, Ariel shook, grief and awe tangling inside her chest. Valor finally spoke, voice rough with restraint, telling her she belonged to him, to the pack, to a fate written before her birth. She told him she was human. He answered that he knew. His jaw tightened as if bracing for pain. From the trees, Corvin Ashthorn watched, eyes cold with hunger. The king's weakness had revealed itself, and Corvin smiled. War began there, beneath branches, as Ariel vanished from the human world tonight forever. Hours later, Nightmore Citadel rose from stone and moonlight, all spires and teeth, ancient and watching. Ariel walked beside Valor, wrapped in borrowed warmth, every step echoing with doubt. Wolves bowed as the king passed, yet their eyes lingered on her, curiosity edged with resentment. Nixa Silvermere studied her openly, calculating, while Eldrin Hollowfang kept pace, silent guardian. Inside the great hall, firelight painted furs gold and red. The seer Salis Dawnwhisper approached, touching Ariel's brow with trembling fingers. She whispered that the bond should not exist, that bloodlines had been broken for less. Ariel felt small, painfully human, surrounded by legends breathing. Valor dismissed the court with a gesture, but tension clung like smoke. Alone he knelt before her, crown discarded, asking if she would stay or flee. The choice crushed her chest. She thought of Leora alone, of burned homes, of the forest's eyes. She nodded once. Relief and terror crossed his face together. Outside the doors, Corvin. Ashthorn listened, memorizing the sound of surrender. He planned to challenge the bond, expose the human as weakness, and claim the throne when the Wolf King hesitated. Blood would follow, and moons would witness the cost of love unforgiven debts. That night, Ariel lay awake on furs scented with pine and wolf, staring at a ceiling carved with battles. Her wrists ached where chains had been, but her chest ached deeper. She was alive, chosen and utterly unprepared. Somewhere beyond the walls, wolves howled, sound rising and falling like a heartbeat. Valor stood on the battlements, wrestling law against instinct, king against mate. He knew the Pax would never accept a human queen. He knew Corvin would strike. At dawn, blood would answer questions mercy could not. Ariel rose, barefoot again, pressing her palm to the cold window. She whispered goodbye to the girl she had been in Thornhaven Crossing. Behind her, the door creaked. Valor entered, eyes shadowed, carrying a blade, wrapped in cloth. He said enemies were already moving. He said the bond made her a target. He asked if she trusted him with her life. Ariel met his gaze, fear steadying into resolve. Before she could answer, horns sounded below, sharp and urgent, announcing the first challenge to the Wolf King's claim. The night held its breath, knowing the dawn would decide whether love survived teeth and fire for them both, and the world watching in silence. Ariel Fenwick stood frozen as the horn's echo crawled through Nightmoor Citadel like a living thing, slipping into cracks and settling in her bones. Valor Runeclaw did not move at first. He listened, head slightly tilted, as if the sound spoke a language older than walls. When he finally turned, the Wolf King looked carved from stone, every trace of softness gone. He told her the challenge had been expected, yet expectation did not dull its danger. Corvin Ashthorn would demand trial by dominance, claiming the bond was false, claiming the king had been bewitched by fragile human blood. Ariel's throat tightened. She understood then that her existence was no longer personal. She was proof or poison. Outside, wolves gathered in the lower ring, claws scraping stone, breath steaming under the moon. Ariel followed Valor through torchlit corridors, her borrowed cloak dragging behind her like a shadow that did not belong. She felt eyes on her everywhere, felt judgment without words. Each step away from Thornhaven Crossing felt heavier, not lighter. She wondered if Leora still watched the forest edge, if guilt would ever loosen its grip. By the time they reached the open arena carved into the cliff, Ariel realized survival here would not mean hiding. It would mean standing where fear could see her clearly and still refusing to bow. The arena roared as Corvin Ashthorn stepped forward, silver scars crossing his muzzle like trophies. His gaze locked on Ariel with open contempt, then slid to Valor with satisfaction. He spoke loudly, carefully, so every wolf would hear the accusation carried on the cold air. He named ancient laws, recited bloodlines, demanded proof. Valor answered with silence, removing his cloak, placing it around Ariel's shoulders instead. The gesture ignited murmurs. Nixa Silvermere stiffened, jaw tight, while Eldrin Hollowfang shifted closer to Ariel, protective without touching. Corvin smiled wider. He declared the trial would begin at first light. If Valor fell, the bond would be broken by death, and Ariel would be returned to the humans or torn apart, depending on the crowd's mercy. The words struck like ice water. Ariel forced herself not to shrink. She caught Valor's eye and saw something raw flicker there, a promise and an apology entwined. Salis Dawn Whisper raised her voice then, warning of visions soaked in red, but her words were swallowed by chanting. The pack demanded spectacle. Ariel learned the first rule of wolves that night. Justice bowed to. Strength and love was only respected if it survived violence. Before dawn, Ariel was taken to a quiet chamber high above the arena. Stone walls breathed cold, and the narrow window framed a strip of paling sky. Nixa Silvermere entered without knocking, her presence sharp as frost. She circled Ariel once, assessing, then spoke with careful politeness, edged in threat. She said humans broke easily. She said kings could not afford weakness. Ariel listened, hands clenched in fur, heart pounding. When Nixa asked why Valor had chosen her, Ariel answered honestly. She said she had not chosen anything. The bond had chosen them both. Nixa's eyes darkened, something wounded flashing through before it vanished. She warned Ariel to leave before blood was spilled in her name. When she left, Ariel sagged against the wall, shaking. She understood then that danger did not only come with teeth. It came with quiet resentment, with loyalty tested by love. At sunrise, Salis returned, pressing a small carved token into Ariel's palm. She whispered that Ariel carried something old, something sleeping. Ariel wanted to laugh at the impossibility. She was human, ordinary. But as the first howl of dawn split the sky, the token warmed in her hand, and she feared the seer might be right. The arena filled as the sun rose, painting the cliff red. Valor entered first, bare-chested, scars mapping battles across his skin. The pack bowed, even Corvin, though his eyes burned. Ariel stood at the edge with Eldrin Hollowfang, pulse racing. The rules were spoken quickly. No weapons. Yield or death. Corvin lunged the moment permission was given, power crashing against Valor in a blur of claws and fury. The ground shook. Ariel watched in horror and awe as the Wolf King met every blow, restrained but relentless. Corvin taunted him, snarling about human softness, about queens who could not bear wolves. Valor faltered only once when Corvin twisted words into Ariel's name. The hesitation cost him. Blood sprayed stone. Ariel screamed before she could stop herself. The sound cut through the arena like glass. Valor turned, eyes blazing, something ancient answering her fear. He surged, driving Corvin back, dominance roaring free. The pack howled as Corvin fell to one knee, beaten but alive. Valor stopped short of killing him. He declared the trial ended. Mercy shocked the crowd. Corvin laughed, bloodied and triumphant in his loss, because mercy proved weakness to those who waited patiently to exploit it. That night, victory tasted bitter. Valor survived, but whispers spread faster than fire. Ariel felt them follow her through corridors, coil around her ankles. She found Valor alone in the battlements, staring into the dark. He admitted the truth then. The bond should not have formed. His mother had once spoken of humans touched by wolf blood, rare and hunted. Ariel's past held gaps she had never questioned. Leora had found her as a baby at the forest edge. The realization hollowed her chest. She was not fully what she believed. The world tilted again, but this time she did not fall. She asked what that meant. Valor answered that it meant enemies would come. Closer than Corvin, quieter, more patient. It meant she would be tested. Ariel closed her eyes, breathing cold air until resolve settled where fear had been. She said she would not run. She would learn. Valor placed his forehead to hers, reverent and restrained. Far below, Corvin Ashthorn nursed his wounds and smiled into the dark, knowing the human had taken her first step toward a truth that would either crown her or destroy them all. Morning broke cold over Nightmore Citadel, carrying rumors like ash on the wind. Ariel Fenwick woke before the bells, heart racing, the echo of claws still ringing in her dreams. She dressed in plain wool, fingers clumsy, mind sharper than steel. Every corridor felt narrower today, every glance heavier. Wolf spoke softly as she passed, voices stopping when she looked up. She felt the bond hum beneath her skin, a quiet pull toward the battlements where Valor Runeclaw stood watch. Yet she turned away. Survival required learning, not longing. Eldrin Hollowfang met her in the lower yard, placing a practice blade in her hands, wood-worn smooth by generations. He said nothing of kings or mates, only taught her how to stand, how to breathe, how to fall without breaking. Each strike jarred her arms, blistered her palms, but steadied her thoughts. Sweat warmed her despite the cold. For the first time since the square at Thornhaven Crossing, she felt choice returning. Above them, Nixa Silvermere observed, expression unreadable. Ariel caught her gaze and did not look away. Respect was not given here. It was endured, earned, bled for, and carried quietly, like a scar. She straightened, waiting for more. By midday, the citadel stirred with preparations that felt like armor being fitted onto fate. Messengers arrived, breathless, carrying news from the borders, warnings wrapped in formality. Ariel listened from shadows, piecing together fragments. Corvin Ashthorn had not yielded loyalty. He gathered sympathizers, old bloodlines hungry for order without mercy. Valor convened the council, voice steady, eyes tired. Ariel was not invited. The exclusion burned sharper than rejection. She wandered into Whisper Pine Hollow beyond the inner walls, needing space to think. Snow thinned beneath towering pines, needles whispering secrets overhead. There, Salis Dawn Whisper waited, as if summoned by doubt itself. The seer spoke gently, asking about Ariel's dreams, about heat beneath fear. Ariel confessed the pull, the strange warmth, the way pain eased when Valor was near. Salis nodded, saying blood remembered what minds forgot. She warned that awakening came with cost, that humans touched by wolves were hunted by both worlds. A snapped branch echoed nearby, and Salis vanished, leaving Ariel, alone with truth pressing close. When Ariel returned, horns sounded again, sharper this time, signaling guests who did not come in peace. The air tightened, waiting, as every path narrowed toward confrontation now. Her heart answered with resolve. The gates opened to reveal envoys cloaked in gray, faces hidden, intentions bare. Ariel stood beside Eldrin Hollowfang, instructed to watch and remember. The envoys spoke of treaties, of balance, of preventing bloodshed through compromise. Their voices were smooth, practiced. Valor listened without interrupting, jaw tight. Ariel sensed the lie before it was named, the bond prickling like warning heat. One envoy shifted, scent changing, and Eldrin's hand brushed his sword. Corvin Ashthorn emerged from the ranks then, unannounced, smiling as if invited. He accused Valor of endangering the realm by sheltering a human anomaly. He demanded Ariel be surrendered for judgment by elders beyond the wilds. Murmurs rippled. Ariel stepped forward before permission could stop her. Her voice shook, but carried. She said she would not be traded like livestock. She said the wolves feared what they could not control. The silence that followed was deadly. Valor's eyes flashed, pride and fear colliding. Corvin laughed, calling courage a trick of desperation. He issued an ultimatum. At the next full moon, Ariel would face approving. Survive, and she stayed. Fail, and the bond would be severed. The envoys bowed, satisfied. Ariel realized choosing to stay delayed fate for now. After the envoys departed, Nightmoor Citadel held its breath. Training intensified. Ariel's days filled with bruises, lessons, and whispered warnings. Eldrin taught her defense. Salis taught her listening. At night, Valor visited rarely, restraint heavier than absence. When he did, they spoke little, sharing silence charged with promise and dread. Ariel learned the rhythms of the pack, the hierarchy written in scars and deference. Nixa. Silvermere challenged her openly in the yard, testing resolve with words sharper than blades. Ariel endured, refusing to rise to bait. Respect shifted, subtle but real. Yet fear lingered, dreams worsened. Ariel dreamed of running on 4 legs, of moonlight burning her veins, of waking screaming. Salis confirmed the truth she feared. The blood was stirring, not enough to change her body, but enough to draw attention. Hunters tracked anomalies. Corvin would guide them. The full moon loomed closer each night. Ariel practiced until exhaustion, driven by the need to choose her own ending. On the eve before the moon, she climbed the battlements alone. Valor found her there, offering no comfort, only honesty. He said the proving would not be fair. He asked again if she trusted him. Ariel answered without hesitation. She nodded. Night deepened, heavy with clouds, as Ariel returned to her chamber. She slept poorly, waking to distant howls and the memory of chains. At dawn, the moon still lingered pale, refusing to release the sky. The proving would come tonight. Ariel dressed carefully, choosing movement over beauty. Leora's face surfaced in memory, a reminder of why surrender was impossible. In the great hall, wolves gathered, anticipation thick. Valor stood apart, crown absent, gaze fixed on Ariel. He placed a simple cord around her wrist, a marker of intent, not ownership. The gesture steadied her. As the sun climbed, Corvin Ashthorn arrived with hunters at his back, smiles thin, eyes sharp. The pack formed a ring. Salis announced the terms. Ariel would cross the howling expanse alone before moonrise. No escort, no weapons. Reach the standing stone and the bond would be honored. Fail, and judgment followed. Wind swept the plain as gates opened. Ariel stepped forward, fear burning clean into focus. She did not look back. The first howl rose behind her as she walked into the wild, carrying hope, dread, and a choice that would decide everything. The path ahead shimmered with danger and possibility alike. Under watching skies, the howling expanse opened like a wound beneath the lingering moon, its grasses silvered and restless, whispering warnings at Ariel Fenwick's ankles. She moved steadily, breath measured, eyes scanning for motion. Every step pulled the bond taut, a distant ache guiding her toward the standing stone she could not yet see. Wind carried scents, old blood, pine, cold iron, layered with something watching. She remembered Eldrin Hollowfang's lessons. Listen with skin, not ears. The ground dipped, rose, and dipped again, forcing her to choose paths by instinct. Twice she stopped, heart hammering as shapes paced parallel in the dark. Wolves did not show themselves. The test was patience, not speed. When fear threatened to steal her breath, Ariel pressed fingers to the cord at her wrist, grounding herself. She spoke Leora's name softly, a promise to survive. Hours passed. Frost crept into her boots. The moon slid higher, then stalled behind clouds, dimming the world to charcoal. Ahead, a low hum vibrated through her bones, growing stronger as she walked. The standing stone called without sound. Ariel felt it then, heat blooming under her skin, answering the wild. She did not run. She walked, refusing to give the night her panic, carrying resolve like a blade she had learned to hold. Halfway across, the hunters revealed themselves. 3 shapes detached from the dark, cloaks blending into the plain, steps deliberate. Ariel slowed, turning to keep them in view. They did not attack. They followed, testing her resolve, pressing pressure without contact. A voice drifted forward, calm and amused, promising mercy if she yielded. Ariel answered with silence. She adjusted her path toward higher ground, recalling Salis Dawnwhisper's warning about listening for lies. The hunters split, one angling left, another right. The third stayed center, closer now, breath visible. Ariel's pulse thudded in her ears. She fainted, slipping down a shallow ravine where wind roared louder, masking movement. Thorns tore her sleeves. Pain sharpened focus. She climbed, lungs burning, and reached a ridge where moonlight thinned clouds just enough to reveal a distant monolith rising from the earth. Relief nearly broke her stride. A hand snatched her cloak. She spun, elbowing hard, catching a jaw. The hunter staggered but did not fall. Another appeared, blocking her path. Ariel ducked, rolled, and ran, legs screaming. A howl cracked behind her, commanding, furious. Valor Runeclaw's presence slammed through the bond, not as rescue, but warning. She understood. This was hers to finish. The standing stone loomed, etched with marks older than the citadel, humming louder as Ariel approached. The hunters closed ranks. Smiles gone. One lunged. Ariel leapt aside, slipping on frost, palms scraping rock. Heat surged, startling and bright. She pressed her hand to the stone, and the hum answered, vibrating up her arm, steadying her spine. The hunters hesitated. Symbols flared faintly, like embers waking. Ariel drew a breath and stood tall. She did not feel stronger. She felt clearer. The lead hunter snarled, stepping in. Ariel spoke then, not loudly, but with certainty. She claimed the trial, claimed the bond's truth, claimed the right to stand. The words were simple, human, unadorned. The stone pulsed. Wind whipped outward, knocking the hunters back a step. Not magic, recognition. They recovered quickly, anger sharpening blades. A strike flashed. Ariel turned it with the stone at her back, using the terrain, the lessons, the moment. She did not defeat them. She endured. Time stretched, each second earned. When the moon cleared the cloud bank fully, the stone rang once, deep and final. The hunters froze. The proving had been witnessed. Snarls turned to curses as they retreated. Pride wounded. Purpose failed. Ariel slid to her knees, shaking, alive. The return to Nightmore Citadel felt longer than the crossing. Wolves emerged from shadows as Ariel walked, forming a silent escort that kept distance, respect earned, but not yet granted. At the gates, Valor waited alone. He did not speak. He took in the tears streaking dirt on her face, the blood on her sleeves, the steadiness in her eyes. When he bowed, the pack followed, a ripple of acknowledgement that shifted the air. Corvin Ashthorne arrived moments later, too late. Fury, thinly veiled. He accused trickery, demanded inspection, challenged the stone's authority. Salis Dawnwhisper answered him, voice ringing, naming the signs witnessed. Nixa Silvermere watched Ariel carefully, something like reluctant admiration crossing her features. The elders murmured, divided. Valor declared the bond honored and the human proven. He did not smile. Victory here bred retaliation. That night, feasting was subdued, songs restrained. Ariel sat beside Valor, hands trembling as exhaustion. Settled. He touched her wrist lightly, grounding, nothing more. Later, in quiet, he told her the hunters belonged to a faction older than Corvin, one that erased anomalies. They would return. Ariel absorbed the truth without flinching. Survival had taught her the shape of courage. She slept deeply for the first time since Thornhaven Crossing. Dreams filled, and not with chains, but with standing stones, humming beneath her palms. Dawn revealed consequences. Messages arrived, seals broken, alliances strained. Valor convened council and, for the first time, invited Ariel to stand within the circle. Eyes followed her, measuring. She spoke only when asked, choosing clarity over bravado. The elders debated protection versus exposure, secrecy versus strength. Corvin pressed for isolation, claiming safety required distance. Ariel met his gaze and refused to be hidden. The room stilled. Valor decided then to announce a journey to the Glass Pine Reach, where answers about mixed blood might be found. Risky? Necessary? As the council dispersed, Nixa approached Ariel privately, offering guarded respect and a warning. Trust would cost her friends. Ariel thanked her anyway. Preparations began at once. Supplies packed, routes mapped. Outside, clouds gathered, promising snow. Valor walked the battlements with Ariel as light faded, admitting fear without surrender. He told her kings often chose wrong because they chose alone. She told him she would choose with him, not for him. The bond warmed, steady and bright. Below, Corvin Ashthorne watched preparations with narrowed eyes, sending a runner into the dark. The proving had ended. The hunt had not. As night fell, the citadel braced for departure, and Ariel Fenwick stepped into a future that demanded more than endurance. It demanded leadership she had never sought, but would not refuse now. Snow fell in soft sheets as Nightmore Citadel emptied at dawn, wolves moving with practiced efficiency, hooves and boots crunching. In rhythm, Ariel Fenwick rode near the center, wrapped in layered furs, posture straight despite fatigue. Valor Runeclaw led at the front, silent, watchful, every sense stretched toward threat. The journey to Glass Pine Reach carried weight far beyond distance. It was an answer or an ending. Pines thickened as they traveled, branches glittering with ice that chimed faintly when wind passed through. Ariel focused on details to steady herself, the smell of leather, the warmth of the horse beneath her, the steady pull of the bond pointing north. Whispers followed them, not spoken, but felt. Wolves glanced over shoulders too often. Eldrin Hollowfang rode close, murmuring warnings about narrow passes and old traps. Nixa Silvermere ranged wide, scouting, her movements sharp and restless. By midday, the path narrowed into a gorge where sound died quickly. Ariel's skin prickled. She remembered Saelis's words. Hunted things feel the moment before the strike. When the first arrow struck stone inches from Valor's head, time snapped tight. Wolves surged forward, shields rising, blades flashing. Ariel's heart pounded, but she did not scream. She listened. The ambush came hard and fast. Cloaked figures poured from the rocks, hunters trained to disable, not kill. Valor shifted instantly, voice carrying commands that cut through chaos. Ariel dismounted as Eldrin pulled her back, but she twisted free, eyes tracking movement. She saw Corvin Ashthorn's mark on a banner before it vanished, confirmation sharp as ice. A hunter lunged toward her, blade angled low. Ariel reacted without thought, grabbing a fallen shield, deflecting the strike, stumbling but upright. Heat flared beneath her skin, answering fear. She felt the bond surge, Valor's alarm echoing in her chest. He broke from the line, intercepting the next attacker with brutal efficiency. Wolves howled, sound tearing the gorge open. Ariel backed toward rock, breath ragged, senses narrowing. She remembered Eldrin's lessons. Use ground, use timing. When another hunter rushed, she sidestepped, pushing them into loose gravel that gave way, sending them sprawling. The clash ended as quickly as it began. Survivors fled into the trees, leaving blood and broken weapons behind. Silence fell, thick and stunned. Ariel realized her hands were steady. That frightened her more than the attack. War had found them sooner than expected. They pressed on, wounds bound. Pace tightened. No one spoke of turning back. As evening approached, the forest changed. Glass pine trees rose pale and translucent, their needles catching light like glass shards. The air hummed softly, familiar now, echoing the standing stone's call. Ariel dismounted, drawn forward. Saelis Dawnwhisper appeared from between the trees as if stepping out of thought itself. She greeted Ariel with a grave nod, and Valor with sorrow. She said the Reach was awake, that bloodlines long buried stirred here, restless and judging. Ariel followed her deeper into the grove, wolves holding back instinctively. At the center stood a pool, surface smooth as mirror. Saelis instructed Ariel to kneel and look. The reflection wavered, shifting. Ariel saw flashes, an infant wrapped in bloodied cloth, left at the forest edge, a woman with wolf eyes weeping, a blade raised in fear. The truth settled, heavy and undeniable. Ariel carried wolf blood through her mother, diluted but alive. Human by birth, not by origin. The revelation did not thrill her. It anchored her. Saelis warned that the Reach would demand choice, claim the blood and risk everything, or deny it and remain hunted. Ariel closed her eyes, feeling fear burn down to resolve again. She asked what claiming meant. Saelis answered simply, survival, strength, and sacrifice. Night fell before the choice was made. Campfires ringed the grove, flames reflecting off glass needles, turning the forest into a cathedral of light. Ariel sat alone by the pool, watching ripples settle. Vylor approached quietly, kneeling beside her, crownless, just a man with too much responsibility. He told her he would protect her regardless. He would face the packs, the hunters, Corvin, all of it. Ariel listened, grateful, but firm. She said protection without truth would fail. She said she needed to choose for herself. Vylor's jaw tightened, pride and fear wrestling. He admitted kings were taught to decide for others. Ariel reached for his hand, grounding him as he had grounded her. She told him love did not mean rescue. It meant trust. The bond warmed, steady and bright. Around them, wolves watched, sensing a turning point they could not name. Nixa Silvermere looked away first, expression thoughtful. Eldrin Hollowfang nodded once, accepting. Far beyond the grove, Corvin Ashthorn received word of the ambush's failure. He smashed a cup, smiling through rage. If blood awakened, he would claim it. Either way, the human would fall. The moon climbed high, glass needles singing softly as Ariel rose, decision forming like steel. At dawn, Ariel stepped into the pool, cold bit deep, stealing breath, but she did not retreat. Salus began the rite, voice low, steady. Ariel spoke her name, her past, her choice. She did not ask for power. She asked for truth. The water glowed faintly, warmth threading through cold, settling under her skin without burning. She felt no transformation, no sudden strength, only clarity and a quiet hum of belonging that did not erase her humanity. When she emerged shivering, Vylor wrapped her in his cloak, reverent. The wolves bowed, not to a queen, but to acknowledgement. The Reach had answered. Yet, as camp broke and they prepared to return, horns echoed distantly, wrong and urgent. Scouts returned pale, reporting a larger force moving fast, banners hidden. Corvin Ashthorn had gathered allies beyond Nightmoor, and he marched with intent to end uncertainty by blood. Ariel stood taller, fear, present but mastered. She understood now that claiming truth invited challenge. She met Vylor's gaze and nodded. They would not flee. They would return to the citadel and face what came. The glass pine reach faded behind them, its song lingering. Ahead waited war, judgment, and a future that demanded Ariel Fenwick step fully into herself. Human heart and wolf blood resolve bound together, ready to be tested again. The return march felt heavier than the journey out, as if the forest itself pressed against them, urging speed while offering no shelter. Ariel Fenwick rode beside Vylor Runeclaw now, no longer hidden in the middle. The wolves noticed. Some approved, some bristled. Snow thickened, muting sound turning the world into a narrow tunnel of breath and intent. Scouts moved ahead and behind, signals tight and urgent. Every few minutes, Ariel felt the bond tighten, a warning pulse that made her fingers curl. She remembered the pool's cold clarity, the truth settling. Without fire, she was not stronger in muscle, but steadier in will. When the first distant horn sounded again, closer this time, no one flinched. Vylor raised a fist, halting the column. He spoke briefly, assigning positions, voice calm as stone. Ariel listened, absorbing strategy without panic. Eldrin Hollowfang placed a small knife in her palm, not ceremonial, just useful. Nixa Silvermere met Ariel's gaze and nodded once, a truce sealed by necessity. As the path widened toward open ground, Ariel understood the fight would not be a single clash. It would be endurance, morale, and choices made under pressure. She breathed in cold air, letting fear sharpen instead of scatter her. Whatever waited beyond the trees would meet someone different from the girl chained in Thornhaven Crossing. They reached the plain before Nightmoor Citadel at dusk, banners snapping in rising wind. Corvin Ashthorn's forces had already arrived, lines arranged with practiced menace. Fires dotted the field like watchful eyes. Wolves from rival packs stood shoulder to shoulder, united by ambition rather than loyalty. Vylor's pack formed ranks, howls low and steady, answering the challenge. Ariel dismounted, heart thudding, senses alive. Corvin stepped forward alone, hands open, smile thin. He called for parley, voice carrying across the field. Valor accepted, motioning Ariel to remain behind. She shook her head. The refusal surprised them both. Valor hesitated, then nodded once. They walked together into the space between lines, frost crunching underfoot. Corvin's gaze slid to Ariel, sharpened by hunger. He spoke of balance, of threats posed by diluted blood, of fear masquerading as tradition. Ariel answered him before Valor could, voice clear. She spoke of choice, of survival without erasure, of wolves strong enough to endure change. Murmurs rippled. Corvin laughed, dismissive, then offered a final bargain. Ariel would submit to binding, monitored and controlled, or war would decide. Silence followed, thick and waiting. Ariel felt the bond steady her spine. She said no. Corvin's smile vanished. He signaled the attack with a lifted hand. The field exploded into motion. Howls ripped the air as lines crashed, bodies colliding in a storm of fur and steel. Ariel retreated with a small guard as planned, heart racing but focused. She tracked Valor's position through the bond, felt his strain as he met Corvin head-on. Eldrin barked orders, keeping pressure away from Ariel, yet the enemy adapted quickly. A squad broke through, angling toward her. Ariel ducked behind a fallen standard, mind racing. She could run. She could hide. Instead, she remembered the pool, the stone, the choice. She stepped out, raising her voice, calling attention. The hunters turned. Ariel drew them toward narrow ground where footing betrayed speed. She used timing, not strength, deflecting strikes, retreating without panic. Pain flared as a blade nicked her arm. Heat answered, not wild, but steady, dulling shock. When one hunter lunged too far, she tripped them, sending them sprawling. Eldrin finished the fight, eyes wide with something like pride. The clash surged around them, relentless. Ariel felt no thrill, only grim determination. This was not glory. It was survival shaped by choice. Above the din, she heard Valor roar, a sound that carried loss and fury together. The duel between Valor and Corvin drew the field's focus, a brutal center of gravity. They circled, scars flashing, strikes measured and vicious. Corvin taunted, naming Ariel as distraction, weakness. Valor answered with silence, blows heavy with restraint. When Corvin fainted and struck low, Valor faltered, blood darkening snow. Ariel's breath hitched. The bond screamed. Without thinking, she moved, breaking formation, sprinting toward them. Shouts followed. Valor's eyes met hers, shock cutting through pain. Corvin saw opportunity and lunged. Ariel slid, across frost colliding with Corvin's arm, knocking the blade aside. The impact jarred her bones. Corvin snarled, turning on her, triumph blazing. Before he could strike, Valor recovered, tackling Corvin from the side. They crashed hard. Ariel scrambled back, breath ragged but alive. Wolves surged, closing ranks. Corvin broke free, retreating with a promise of return etched into his glare. The field stilled as his forces withdrew, unwilling to press without their leader. Victory tasted like ash. Bodies lay still. Fires guttered. Valor knelt, bloodied but standing. Ariel reached him, hands shaking as she steadied him. He touched her cheek, equal parts gratitude and terror. The pack watched, recalculating what strength looked like now. Night fell heavy and quiet. Fires burned low as wounded were tended, names spoken softly. Ariel sat beside Valor in the aftermath, exhaustion sinking deep. Salis Dawn Whisper approached, eyes grave. She said the battle was only the opening chapter. Corvin would fracture alliances, poison trust, strike unseen. The old hunters would not stop. Ariel nodded, accepting the weight without flinching. She had crossed too many thresholds to pretend innocence. Valor addressed the pack before sleep claimed them. He spoke of unity forged by choice, not fear. He named Ariel as his equal in council, not crown. The declaration stirred murmurs, then acceptance. Nixa Silvermere bowed first. Others followed. Ariel felt the shift like a tide turning. Later, alone on the battlements, she stared into the dark, arm throbbing, heart steady. Valor joined her, wrapping a cloak around both of them. He admitted fear of losing her. She admitted fear of losing herself. They stood together, not promises, but resolve shared. Below, Nightmore Citadel held, battered but unbroken. Far away, Corvin Ashthorn planned his next move, smiling into shadows. Ariel Fenwick understood now that survival was not the end. It was the beginning of responsibility she would carry, willingly, into whatever dawn came next. The days after the battle blurred into a rhythm of repair and watchfulness, each hour carrying the tension of a held breath. Nightmore Citadel bore fresh scars, cracked stone, scorched banners, blood-darkened snow, but it stood. Ariel Fenwick moved through its corridors with new awareness, no longer unseen, no longer sheltered. Wolves greeted her with nods or cautious glances, measuring what her presence meant for their future. She spent mornings helping tend the wounded, learning names, hearing quiet stories of loss. The work grounded her. Pain made people honest. Valor Runeclaw oversaw rebuilding and patrols, sleeping little, pushing himself harder than those around him liked. Through the bond, Ariel felt his strain, the king's weight pressing down. At night, horns echoed distantly, scouts reporting movements at the borders. Fires snuffed quickly, trails abandoned. Corvin Ashthorn did not attack. Again. He waited. That waiting gnawed at nerves more than open war. Salus Dawnwhisper warned that silence often preceded cruelty. Ariel listened, absorbing strategy and fear alike, realizing leadership was not command alone, but endurance under uncertainty. Each dawn she chose not to hide. Each dusk she felt the citadel shift subtly around her, adapting, bracing, preparing for a future none could clearly see yet. Tension found release in smaller clashes. A patrol returned bloodied after encountering traps laced with old hunter marks. Ariel studied the symbols with Salus, recognizing echoes from Glasspine Reach. Someone else hunted anomalies now, not just Corvin's faction. The realization chilled her. Enemies multiplied when truth surfaced. Valor convened council, debate sharp and weary. Some elders urged secrecy again, arguing Ariel's presence painted a target. Ariel waited until invited, then spoke plainly. She said hiding had already failed. She said strength came from unity, from refusing to fracture under fear. The room stilled. Eldrin Hollowfang backed her openly, recounting how morale shifted when she stood her ground in battle. Nixa Silvermere added a careful endorsement, noting alliances held better when leaders trusted their own choices. The decision came slowly, then settled. Nightmore would stand openly, drawing allies willing to face change. Messengers were sent. Ariel felt the weight of the choice settle on her shoulders, heavy but earned. Outside, snow fell again, covering scars without erasing them. She learned that leadership rarely felt triumphant. It felt necessary. As days passed, Ariel's dreams changed. She no longer ran alone. She dreamed of standing stones and glass needles, of voices murmuring without menace. The warmth beneath her skin steadied, no longer flaring unpredictably. Salus said balance was forming, fragile but real. Training continued, not to turn Ariel into a warrior, but to keep her alive. She learned to read terrain, to spot lies in posture, to trust silence. Valor joined her once, sparring lightly, laughter surprising them both when she outmaneuvered him using his own advice. The moment eased something tight between them, yet intimacy remained restrained, guarded by fear of distraction. That restraint would be tested sooner than expected. A messenger arrived at dusk bearing a sealed token, a challenge not from Corvin, but from the Hunters' Covenant. They demanded parley at Fellcrag Pass under truce, offering knowledge in exchange for Ariel's presence. The offer reeked of trap. Valor refused outright. Ariel disagreed. She argued that understanding the hunters could prevent worse bloodshed. The disagreement cut deep, their first true fracture. Voices rose, then fell into cold silence. That night, Ariel slept poorly, knowing the choice ahead would test trust more than battle had. At dawn, Ariel stood before Valor with quiet resolve. She would go to Fellcrag Pass with limited escort. She would not be hidden. Valor's jaw tightened as he weighed duty against fear. Through the bond, she felt his terror of losing her like a blade at his throat. She took his hands, grounding him. She told him she trusted his strength. She needed him to trust hers. The words hurt them both. Finally, he agreed, setting strict terms and contingencies. Eldrin Hollowfang and Nixa Silvermere would accompany her. Salus would remain to watch signs. The journey was short but tense, cliffs rising like teeth around the narrow pass. The hunters waited in plain sight, faces uncovered, expressions unreadable. Their leader spoke calmly, admitting fear had driven cruelty. They revealed the truth Corvin hid. Anomalies like Ariel had once unified wolves and humans, until power seekers erased them. The Covenant existed to prevent another union that threatened control. Ariel listened, heart heavy. She offered no surrender. She offered coexistence, boundaries enforced by consequence. The leader laughed softly, saying idealism died first. As parley ended, arrows flew from hidden ledges. The truce shattered. Ariel moved without panic, following drills, using cover. The escape cost blood, but they returned alive, knowledge gained at a price. Nightmore Citadel received them with relief and fury. Valor crushed his fear into resolve, ordering defenses strengthened, alliances expedited. Ariel shared what she learned, refusing to soften truth. The hunters would never stop while control remained their goal. Corvin's ambitions aligned with theirs. A final confrontation loomed, inevitable as winter. Preparations shifted toward defense and exposure. Messages went out to packs willing to stand against erasure. Some refused, some answered. The citadel filled with unfamiliar wolves, tension crackling but hopeful. Ariel took her place beside Valor in council, speaking less, listening more. Trust built slowly, earned through consistency. On the eve before, the full moon, Salus warned of a convergence, bloodlines, ambition, fear colliding at Nightmore's gates. Ariel stood on the battlements, watching torches gather in the distance like a constellation of threats. Valor joined her, shoulder brushing hers. He admitted he feared losing the world he knew. She admitted she feared becoming the reason it burned. They stayed anyway. Below them, the citadel braced, walls strong, hearts uncertain. Ariel Fenwick felt no chains now, only choice pressing forward, demanding she stand when dawn broke and decide what kind of future would be fought for under the coming moon. The full moon rose swollen and bright, bleaching Nightmore Citadel in cold silver as allied packs arrived under banners stitched in haste. The air vibrated with overlapping scents, pine, iron, fear, resolve, layered thick enough to taste. Ariel Fenwick stood at the inner gate, counting breaths, grounding herself in the press of reality. Wolves lined the walls, eyes, glowing, weapons ready. Valor Runeclaw moved among them, offering quiet words, steady presence, a king forged by pressure. Through the bond, Ariel felt his resolve harden, fear shaped into clarity. Scouts returned at dusk with grim news. Corvin Ashthorne marched with a coalition larger than expected, hunters woven into his ranks like thorns. This would not be a siege of patience. It would be a test of breaking points. Salus Dawnwhisper confirmed what Ariel already felt, a convergence pulling everything inward, demanding truth paid in blood. The standing stones beyond the walls hummed faintly, echoing Glasspine's song. Ariel steadied herself, knowing the night would decide more than territory. It would decide whether change could survive force. When the first horn sounded from the valley, low and relentless, the citadel answered with a unified howl that lifted the hair on her arms and anchored her spine in place. Corvin Ashthorne advanced openly this time, banners raised, confidence sharp. He called for Valor to meet him, offering a final choice beneath the moon. "Surrender Ariel to binding," he said, "and spare the citadel." Valor refused without hesitation. Ariel stepped forward beside him, heart pounding but voice clear. She declared herself openly, human-born, wolf-blooded, choosing neither erasure nor domination. Murmurs rippled through both armies. Corvin sneered and signaled the attack. The valley erupted. Siege engines rolled forward, crude but effective. Arrows rained. Nightmore's defenses answered, stones crashing, shields rising. Ariel moved where needed, relaying signals, pulling wounded from danger, her presence steadying those who faltered. The bond guided her to breaches before alarm sounded. Eldrin Hollowfang coordinated countercharges. Nixa Silvermere led flanking maneuvers with ruthless precision. The hunters targeted Ariel relentlessly, cutting paths toward her with chilling focus. She felt the pull of pursuit like gravity. Instead of retreating, she drew them into the inner yard, where space narrowed and lines of sight broke. There, wolves overwhelmed them, forcing a costly withdrawal. The night churned, violence rising and falling like waves, each surge testing resolve. Near midnight, Corvin breached the western wall in a calculated strike, carving a path straight toward the keep. Valor met him amid falling stone, clash shaking the ground. Ariel felt the bond strain as blows landed, each impact echoing through her chest. She fought her instinct to run to Valor, trusting the plan they had made. Instead, she followed Salus to the old sanctum beneath the citadel, where Standing Stone slept in shadow. Salus revealed the final truth withheld until now. The stones could amplify choice, binding factions by oath witnessed and enforced by the land itself, but only if someone of mixed blood spoke the vow. Ariel understood the cost. Such a binding would end the war here, but it would tether her to Nightmore forever, no return to anonymity, no quiet life. She did not hesitate. As Salus began the rite, tremors shook dust from the ceiling. Above, steel rang. Ariel placed her hands on the stone, voice steady, calling for unity under shared consequence, naming betrayal as exile, violence as judgment return. The stone answered, humming deep and resonant, sending a pulse through the ground that rippled outward like a held breath released. The pulse hit the battlefield like dawn. Wolves faltered, blades lowered, senses reeling as the land itself weighed intent. Those aligned with Corvin felt the resistance, a grinding pressure that sapped will. Corvin roared in fury, striking harder, but the rhythm broke. Valor seized the moment, disarming him with brutal precision. Corvin staggered, disbelief flickering as the land refused him. Ariel emerged into moonlight as the fighting stilled, voice carrying across the yard. She named the binding, its terms plain and unforgiving. Choose. Peace under shared law, or leave Nightmore forever. Silence followed, thick and stunned. One by one, allied packs lowered weapons, feeling the land's acceptance. Hunters retreated, snarling, unable to bear the weight. Corvin lunged once more, a final desperate bid, but Nixa intercepted, blade at his throat. Valor ended it, not with death, but exile, casting Corvin beyond the binding's reach. The land echoed agreement. Fires guttered and died. The moon slid behind cloud, the night exhaling. Dawn came pale and quiet. Nightmore Citadel stood, battered but bound by something stronger than fear. Wounded were tended, dead honored. Ariel felt the cost settle. Exhaustion deep as bone, and a tether she could not deny. Valor found her at first light, eyes searching. She told him what she had done, what it meant. He listened without interruption, then bowed his head, gratitude and grief braided together. He said he would not cage her. She said she would not flee. They stood together, neither rescued nor rescuing, choosing the same ground. Salus confirmed the binding would hold, though resentment would linger. Change always drew resistance. As the sun climbed, wolves gathered in the yard waiting. Ariel spoke once more, not as queen, but as witness. She named the losses, the choice made, the work ahead. The pack answered with a howl not of conquest, but commitment. Ariel Fenwick felt the bond settle into something enduring. The war had broken. The future, fragile and real, waited to be built by hands willing to choose it again and again. The quiet after the binding felt unnatural, like the pause after thunder when ears still rang. Nightmore Citadel moved carefully through the morning, as if one wrong step might wake violence again. Ariel Fenwick felt hollowed out, the cost of the oath settling deep in her bones. Wolves approached her differently now, not with suspicion or awe, but with expectation. That weight pressed harder than fear ever had. Vailor. Runeclaw remained close without crowding, his presence steady, anchoring. He issued orders with calm authority, directing repairs, patrols, care for the wounded. Yet through the bond, Ariel felt something unsettled. The binding had ended the open war, but it had also drawn a final, desperate response. Salis Dawnwhisper confirmed it before noon. The Hunter's Covenant had fractured, but a remnant refused the oath and fled into the high ravines, carrying something dangerous with them. An old relic, bound to blood and moon, capable of tearing the binding apart from within. Ariel understood immediately. The oath tied her to Nightmore, but it also made her the key. If the relic reached the standing stones, the land itself would reject her, shattering unity and plunging the packs into chaos. Vailor ordered pursuit. Ariel insisted on going. This time he did not argue. The choice had become mutual, heavy, and unavoidable. They rode hard into the ravines as clouds thickened overhead, snow turning to sleet that stung exposed skin. The terrain grew treacherous, cliffs narrowing paths to single-file passages where echoes misled and footing betrayed. Ariel focused on balance, on breath, on the steady pull guiding her forward. The bond pointed true. Eldrin Hollowfang led the advance, Nixa Silvermere guarding the rear. The hunter struck at dusk, desperate and precise, aiming to delay rather than defeat. The clash was brief, but brutal. Ariel felt the relic before she saw it, a cold absence, a wrongness that swallowed sound. The lead hunter fled toward a narrow shelf above a chasm, clutching a wrapped bundle that bled shadow into the air. Vailor pursued alone, faster, but the ledge crumbled beneath him. Ariel's heart seized as he fell, catching himself by one hand, body slamming hard against stone. Without thinking, she ran. The world narrowed to motion and choice. She slid across ice, reaching him as the hunter turned, blade raised. Ariel planted herself between them, arms wide, voice steady. She invoked the binding, naming the land, the cost, the witness. The relic thrashed in the hunter's grip, reacting to her blood. The hunter screamed, losing control. Ariel grabbed the bundle, cold burning her palms, and hurled it into the chasm. Darkness screamed as it fell, swallowed by depth. The land shuddered, then stilled. Ariel collapsed to her knees as Eldrin hauled Vailor up, alive, shaken, furious with fear. They returned to Nightmore under heavy sky. The threat ended, but the cost undeniable. Ariel's hands blistered and blackened where she had touched the relic, pain flaring with every movement. Salis examined the burns, eyes grave. The relic was gone, but it had marked Ariel deeply, binding her even tighter to the land. Healing would come, but never fully. Ariel accepted the truth without protest. She had crossed the last threshold. Vailor raged quietly at the injustice, at a world that demanded sacrifice from the same. Soul again and again, Ariel calmed him, reminding him that choice gave meaning to cost. That night, the pack gathered in the great hall, tension humming. The elders spoke of succession, of stability, of what Nightmore must become to survive. They looked to Vailor, then to Ariel. The unspoken question pressed close. Would she accept a permanent place at the heart of their future, knowing it meant never returning to a human life unshadowed by consequence? Ariel felt the answer settle long before she spoke. She had been running from erasure, not belonging. Now she chose presence, openly, fully, without illusion. She addressed the hall with quiet certainty. She said she would stay, not as symbol or shield, but as partner in rebuilding. She would hold the oath as long as she lived, and when she could not, she would help choose who came after. Murmurs spread, then solidified into agreement. Nixa Silvermere bowed deeply, first among the leaders. Eldrin Hollowfang followed. Others joined, the sound of acceptance rippling outward. Valor stepped forward then, not crowning her, not claiming her, but offering his hand. Ariel took it, the bond warmed, steady and calm, no longer sharp with fear. Outside, the storm broke, sleet turning to gentle snow. Nightmore Citadel breathed, something old and wounded beginning to heal. Yet Ariel knew resolution did not mean ease. The world beyond still watched. Change would be tested again. But this time, it would not be alone. As the hall emptied, Valor and Ariel stood by the fire, exhaustion and relief mingling. He asked if she regretted anything. She thought of chains, of standing stones, of falling relics. She said no. Regret lived in the lives not chosen. This one, hard and real, was hers. Before dawn, Ariel climbed the battlements alone, bandaged hands resting on cold stone. The land hummed faintly beneath her feet, not demanding, just present. She thought of Thornhaven Crossing, of Leora's courage, of the girl she had been. She whispered gratitude to the memory and let it go. Valor joined her quietly, wrapping a cloak around her shoulders. Together, they watched light creep over the mountains, pale and promising. The war had ended, not with conquest, but with commitment. The final test had passed. What remained was the work of living with what had been chosen. Ariel Fenwick closed her eyes, breathing in cold air, and felt the bond settle into something enduring and true. The night released its grip. Morning claimed the sky. Morning settled gently over Nightmore Citadel, light spilling across stone that had known too much blood. Ariel Fenwick woke to quiet, not the fragile silence of fear, but the steady hush of a place, choosing to live. Her hands ached beneath fresh wrappings, scars already knitting into her story. She dressed slowly, feeling the land's soft hum beneath her feet. No longer demanding, only present. Wolves moved through the courtyards below, repairing walls, sharing food, laughing in low bursts that sounded almost surprised. The world had not ended. That realization carried its own weight. Ariel descended the steps as Valor Runeclaw joined her, his expression lighter than she had ever seen it, though shadows lingered. Together they walked the battlements, greeting pack members by name, acknowledging loss without letting it define them. Messengers arrived from allied territories, bearing acceptance, cautious hope, and questions about the binding. Ariel listened more than she spoke, answering plainly when she did. There were no grand promises, only commitment to fairness enforced by consequence. Salus Dawnwhisper confirmed the land had settled, the standing stones quiet but watchful. The future would test them, but it would do so openly now. Ariel felt a deep, unexpected calm. She had survived fear, war, and truth. What remained was the work of becoming. At midday, the pack gathered in the inner yard, not for ceremony, but for acknowledgement. Elders stepped forward, recounting the losses and naming the choices that had spared worse. Ariel stood beside Valor, neither elevated nor hidden. When asked what role she would claim, she answered simply. She would serve as warden of the binding, witness to oaths, keeper of balance between packs and people. The title carried responsibility without crown or throne. The elders accepted, relief evident. Nixa Silvermere approached afterward, offering a blade engraved with Nightmore's mark, not as weapon, but symbol. Eldrin Hollowfang clasped Ariel's forearm in respect. The pack's acceptance felt earned, not gifted. Later, Ariel visited the lower halls where human traders sheltered under protection, faces wary but curious. She spoke with them quietly, bridging fear with familiarity. Word would spread that Nightmore was no longer a place of erasure. Outside the walls, snow melted into rivulets, revealing grass beneath. Change arrived without fanfare, small and stubborn as spring. Ariel realized leadership often looked like listening, like choosing patience when force was easier. As evening approached, Ariel returned to the sanctum beneath the citadel, standing stones cool and silent. She placed her scarred hands against them, not to demand, but to thank. The land answered with warmth that did not burn. She remembered the girl in chains, the fear that had once defined her choices. That girl had survived, so this woman could stand here now. Valor found her there, expression unguarded. He spoke of the future with honesty, alliances to mend, children who would grow up under different laws, mistakes they would make, and correct together. Ariel told him she did not want a throne or songs. She wanted a life that did not require her to disappear. Valor smiled softly, relief and admiration mingling. He offered partnership again, not as king to subject, but as equal walking the same ground. Ariel accepted without ceremony. The bond settled into something gentle, no longer sharp with urgency. It felt like home, defined not by walls, but by choice renewed daily. Above them, the citadel breathed, holding. Night fell clear and bright. Fires were lit in the yard, not for defense, but for warmth and gathering. Wolves shared stories, grief easing into laughter. Ariel sat among them, not apart, not elevated. When music rose, simple and steady, she felt tears sting unexpectedly. Not of sadness, but release. She had carried fear for so long it had shaped her spine. Now it loosened its grip. Valor watched her from across the fire, eyes warm. Later, as stars wheeled overhead, Ariel walked the outer wall alone, savoring quiet. She thought of Thornhaven Crossing and sent a message by courier before sleep. Leora would know she lived, and that she had chosen a life worth the cost. The thought settled something old and aching. Ariel returned to the keep as bells marked the hour, knowing tomorrow would bring work, disagreements, and tests without prophecy to warn her. That was all right. She had learned how to stand. Dawn arrived clean and bright, sunlight gilding Nightmoor's towers. Ariel stood at the gate as it opened to the road, welcoming the day. The land hummed softly beneath her boots, no longer a burden, but a shared promise. Valor joined her, cloak catching the light. Together they watched travelers approach, wolves, humans, messengers, drawn by rumor of a place that chose balance over fear. Ariel breathed in cold air and smiled, small but sure. She had been born human. She had chosen to stand with wolves. The title that once sounded like a curse now felt like truth claimed honestly. Not destiny imposed, but a path walked deliberately. The world beyond would test Nightmoor again, but it would find something different waiting. Not chains, not erasure. A woman who had survived being offered up and had answered with choice. Ariel Fenwick stepped forward into the morning, grounded, scarred, and whole. The story did not end with conquest or crowns, but with a life reclaimed and a future built, one decision at a time. If this story moved you, don't just close the video. Be part of it. Drop a comment below and tell me which moment broke you or gave you hope, and where you're watching from in the world. If you want more emotionally powerful stories like this, stories about love, destiny, and choosing who you become, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until the next tale, stay kind, stay brave, and keep choosing your own ending.